Fear is not loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself. Fear decides quietly. It chooses the paths you don't take. It speaks in your voice, and you call it reason. It designs your limits before you ever call them yours. This is not chaos. This is the architecture of fear. You believe your life is shaped by decisions, by courage, by logic, by free will. But look closer. Most choices are not made to grow. They are made to avoid. Avoid pain. Avoid rejection. Avoid the unknown. Fear doesn't stop you. It simply offers you a safer story, and you follow it. The job you didn't apply for. The conversation you didn't start. The dream you called unrealistic before anyone else could. These weren't failures. They were redirections. Fear decided, you obeyed. And here's what makes it invisible. You never felt forced. You felt reasonable. You felt wise. You felt like yourself. Fear is not an emotion. It is a system, an invisible architect. It builds walls inside the mind and calls them boundaries. It creates corridors where only certain thoughts are allowed to walk. You don't notice the construction because it happens early and slowly. A word from a parent. Don't be ridiculous. Don't get your hopes up. Don't make a scene. A rejection at school. The laughter. The silence. The lesson learned. A moment of humiliation you never speak about. Brick by brick. And the mind, brilliant as it is, learns. It learns which paths lead to pain. It learns which dreams are dangerous. It learns to close doors before you even reach them. By the time you're aware, you're already living inside it. The architecture is complete, and you call it personality. Fear rarely appears as fear. It appears as responsibility, realism, maturity, being smart, protecting yourself. It sounds like your parents, like society, like wisdom. The mind learns one rule early. If you don't move, you don't get hurt. And so safety becomes not just a choice. It becomes your identity. You don't say, I'm afraid. You say, I'm being responsible. You don't say, I'm scared to try. You say, I'm being realistic. You don't say, I'm avoiding life. You say, I'm choosing peace. Fear gives you better words, and you wear them proudly. But here's the mechanism underneath. Every time you choose safety over risk, your brain rewards you. A small hit of relief, a quiet sense of control. The nervous system relaxes. The body says, good, you survived. And survival feels like success. But survival is not the same as living. Nothing dramatic happens. No collapse, no crisis. Just a quiet reduction. Each avoided choice makes the inner space smaller. The world doesn't shrink around you. You shrink around yourself. The job becomes the career you tolerate. The relationship becomes the one you don't leave. The city becomes the place you never escape. Not because you can't, because the idea of leaving feels impossible. And impossibility is just architecture pretending to be truth. Until one day, you feel it, not as pain, but as absence. Like a room where you used to dance, now you only sit. Like a voice you used to have, now you only listen. Like a person you were becoming, until you stopped. You look around and realize, this life is safe. But it's small, and smallness over time becomes suffocation. One thought emerges unexpectedly. This feels safe, but it doesn't feel alive. This is the moment of fracture. When the architecture reveals itself, not as danger, but as authorship, it has been writing your life in your name, signing documents you never read, making promises you never agreed to, and you've been honoring them anyway. Every maybe later, every I'm not ready, every that's not for people like me, these were not your words. They were architecture. You were just the tenant. And here's the strange part. You start to see the pattern everywhere. The friend who never travels because they're being practical. The sibling who stays in the family business because it's stable. The colleague who talks about their novel but never writes it. Not because they lack talent, but because fear wrote a better story. One where trying is riskier than not trying. Where failure is worse than never beginning. Where safety is the highest virtue. And once you see it in them, you can't unsee it in yourself. There is no immediate escape. Fear doesn't collapse when seen. It destabilizes. And destabilization is uncomfortable. That's why most people choose ignorance over awareness. They'd rather stay small than feel uncertain. But once perceived, the architecture is never invisible again. You can't unsee the cage. You can only decide, will you keep pretending it's a home? Understanding this changes nothing immediately. You don't suddenly become fearless. The walls don't disappear. The corridors remain. But something shifts. You stop calling it wisdom. You stop calling it maturity. You start calling it what it is. And that small shift, that single act of honesty, changes everything. Not because it makes you brave, but because it makes you aware. And awareness is the crack in the foundation. The first tremor before the collapse. You begin to ask different questions. Not how do I get rid of fear, but what did fear take from me? Not how do I become courageous, but what would I do if I stopped listening? These questions don't have easy answers. They're not meant to. They're meant to disturb the structure, to make the walls visible, to turn architecture into choice. And that's where everything begins. Not with courage. With honesty, fear is not loud. Fear decides quietly, and it has been deciding for you. The question is no longer how to escape it. The question is, how much of your life was designed without your consent? How many doors did you close because fear told you they were locked? How many versions of yourself did you abandon because fear said they were unrealistic? And now that you see it, what will you do? Will you rebuild? Or will you keep living in someone else's design? The architecture of fear is not permanent. It was built slowly. It can be dismantled slowly. But only if you're willing to see it. Only if you're willing to name it. Only if you're willing to ask, whose life is this? And answer honestly.